Jimmy Klaus.
Chance Burleson.
How you doing, buddy?
One and only. Welcome to the pilot, if you will, of something that we hope to do many, many more as a podcast of Legends and Dragons.
Inaugural.
Inaugural.
Pilot? Pilot?
I don't know. Isn't that what they say for TV shows?
Yeah. So what we'll end up doing is we'll have a test group.
Ooh.
Right? And so we'll show this to the test group, and then we'll completely ignore whatever they say, and then just do whatever we want.
I like that. We will ignore your feedback.
Yep.
And we will continue to do what we do.
Yeah. We are here in celebration of us.
Absolutely.
Very much like Howard Stern's first concert.
Or as Snoop said, I want to thank me for me for getting us here. So I know we've been friends for a few years.
Yes.
And I know some of your story. And I know that you have been doing martial arts a lot longer than I have.
I have.
But tell me the story. Tell me of your dad to you. Did your grandfather do martial arts?
No, and there's an even better story about that. But let's start with just the first and second generation.
Okay.
Okay. So, I was born a poor child on the other side of the railroad. That's not true at all. So, my father, I remember like when I came online, when I came out of the ether of childhood, my first memories were not of my dad being in martial arts. Okay? And the reason is because he wasn't doing martial arts when I came online. Okay? So around 4 or 5, my dad had completely stopped doing martial arts.
Just because?
No. Another story. So
stay tuned for more stories.
Yeah. So I remember when I was 4 or 5, when my first memories. Actually, that's not true. So my first memories were of houses in downtown Fort Worth on 5th Avenue, and all I know is that my dad was gone to work, and then when he came home, my dad was home. But I know he worked a lot, and then he was in martial arts. He was running schools. He had like 12 or 14 schools across Fort Worth Metroplex. But I didn't know what he was doing. And then the craziest thing happened, Jimmy. We moved to the middle of the Kainishi Mountains in southeast Oklahoma.
Okay.
And I was having the time of my life because we got our water from a well. We lived in a cabin. It was like the Swiss Family Burleson. Okay?
Okay.
I
can see that.
I had no idea why. but I was about it. I was on board. And then around 3rd grade, we decided, or the family was moving back out of Oklahoma back into Fort Worth.
Okay.
And Dad was restarting this thing that apparently he was known for, which was martial arts. Now he had taught me and my sister like in an abandoned lodge in the middle of Oklahoma.
Martial arts?
Yeah. And my first memory of martial arts was that it was hilarious because my dad would yell, right? And so me and my sister, and he was teaching us basic stuff, and he would "Ayah!" and he would yell, and we would die laughing. It was the funniest thing we'd ever heard in our life.
Okay.
Which I don't think he knew how to cope with that, because his yell was blood curdling and terrifying to his opponents.
Sure.
But his children
you thought
it was the funniest thing in the world.
Yeah, I thought Dad was being a clown.
Right.
You thought, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
And so obviously we didn't take it seriously. So I didn't actually get to train with other people in a class till I was 7 or 8 years old. Okay. And Dad moved back to Fort Worth, took over one of his schools, and that's when my martial arts started with other people, where I got to spar and stuff like that.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And from that moment, even that moment in the lodge in Oklahoma when I was 4 or 5 years old, I've never not done martial arts.
Okay.
I have always been involved in training from that day forward, right?
What style?
That's the thing.
Was there a style back when he was doing it, or was it just
It was a
blanket
mixed
karate?
man. It was a mixed bag because my dad's first experience with martial arts was as a Navy boxer.
Okay, hey, that's funny. My old man was a Navy boxer.
Yeah. So my dad was 136 pounds at 17, and he got kicked out of Polytechnic High School
Okay.
for knocking out the principal. And he
All right.
lied about his age and went into the Navy.
Sure.
Now,
okay.
this was
Yeah.
obviously a very long time ago because
Right.
he was born in 36. So by the time they caught him, he had turned 18 and he was already in the Navy.
Yeah.
So 136 pounds, he starts lifting weights. He starts boxing, and he was competing in smokers
Okay.
in the Navy. Then he got stationed in Okinawa. And as a boxer, he noticed these little Okinawans doing this fighting thing, and he's like, I'm gonna do that.
So he was going to learn. He was on fire.
He was
there.
ready to go.
Did he learn there? When he was
Yes, he did, and I don't know if you can kind of go there in your head a little bit of how popular an American naval base was in Okinawa in the 50s.
there? Oh, I'm sure it was wild.
Well, he was
Meaning-
not welcome.
I was going to say,
He was-
meaning I'm sure that the locals did not welcome.
Nope, he was not welcome, and he walked into this little seaside Wadaru Okinawan karate school, and they're like, we won't teach you.
Okay.
And he kept showing up, and they kept beating the crap out of him over and over and over, and he wouldn't stop going.
Right.
And eventually he earned their respect, and they promoted him to brown belt and gave him this thing. There's a picture up on the wall of this, it's that thing right there with the carpet. It looks like it's a ceremonial thing that was in dojos. They gave it to him
Okay.
when he got transferred. And then he went to Japan and he did judo, and he spent some time in the Philippines doing Kali. And so, but he didn't have, he had a boxing, Okinawan, karate, judo, Filipino thing.
Yeah.
And then he came back to Texas when he got discharged from the Navy, and found out about some guy named Jun Rhee who was in San Marcos University
Okay.
teaching flexibility classes. So the
Early yoga.
Yeah.
Before yoga was a
Right.
thing. Okay, so he was teaching hot yoga
Right.
back then. Gotcha.
So the prejudice that existed against Americans in Okinawa, that prejudice still existed here in the States.
I'm sure.
So that's why he couldn't call it martial arts.
Okay.
So Jun Rhee was teaching all of these big football players in San Marcos, and apparently had a challenge, said, all right, any one of you take me down or knock me out, and he, pow, who wants to sign up? And my dad and a guy named Alan Steen trained under Jun Rhee. Alan got his black belt first,
Okay.
and this is the
Right.
this is the best I can
This
gather.
is the tree.
There's many versions of this story. I'm not entirely sure which is true. I do know that Alan Steen got his black belt before my dad.
Okay.
But I do know that Jun Rhee personally told me that Dad was one of his black belts.
Okay.
So that is, to the best I can gather, that's what happened.
Okay.
Okay.
So he was learning in San Marcos.
Yes. And
then-
so
okay.
him and Alan Steen would drive back, and they would each learn half of a kata and then teach each other the other half of the kata. That's the version that I got.
Okay.
And so, but that was Taekwondo.
Okay.
Now, Alan Steen was pure Taekwondo. There's always been kind of a Fort Worth, Dallas friendly rivalry between Dallas under Jun Rhee and then Dad's thing in Fort Worth,
Right.
right?
Okay.
But Dad's was always a mixed bag.
Yeah,
He did-
he had everything.
He did the Taekwondo. He was ranked under Jun Rhee,
Right.
but he still was a boxer, and he was still had the experience in Wado-ryu, and he still had the experience in judo. So I remember from the very beginning, we were never just learning Taekwondo.
Right.
We were learning, Junri would say, you have to throw your side kick like this. This is the proper way to do it.
Right.
But then sometimes when he wasn't looking, we would throw Japanese side kicks,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we've always been a hybrid.
Right.
From day one. And the very first karate school that I trained in was actual karate school.
Yeah.
Not a lodge on a concrete floor, right, with birds.
Sure, yeah.
Was next to the Cobra Club across from Bell Helicopter.
Okay.
That auto repair shop.
Yep.
That was the first karate school I remember.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, so not too far.
Right.
Really. Okay.
And so it started there, and it has never stopped for me.
Yeah. So what would you say Legends teaches? Like, is there a certain Taekwondo, Judo? Or is it a mixed bag?
It's I believe it's an evolution of what Dad started in the 60s.
Okay.
Which is, we're going to take from this, we're going to take from this, we're going to
Yeah.
take from this, we're going to take from this. The freedom that I think that presents is that we're not bound by tradition and style.
Yeah.
So, like we just last year switched to a rotating curriculum where we played 52 card pickup with everything we taught.
Yeah.
And we discarded everything that we couldn't believe was teaching skills we wanted them to learn.
Right.
So we've always been pretty Taekwondo heavy.
Right.
But now I think we've spread out that emphasis. So it's, we've got a lot of Krav based self-defense, and we've got a lot more Kali, and we've got a lot more BJJ, and we've got we got rid of a lot of the high level Taekwondo stuff, like the spinning heel kicks and all that kind of stuff, mainly because I'm old now.
Listen, I get it. Let me share with you an old story, but I'll start where my martial arts.
Please.
Years ago, so I grew up in Norfolk, Virginia. My old man was in the Navy. He was a boxer as well. He, in fact, my old man and my grandfather were both Navy. They told me go Air Force. My grandfather said go Air Force because that's where the prima donnas were.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, thanks, Gramps. I signed up for the Air Force. But I remember going to the YMCA. So I have two younger sisters, and my younger sister, my baby sister, was doing martial arts, whatever, karate class, whatever the YMCA was offering. And so I took a class. I was probably about 14, maybe 14, 15, just a punk teenage kid. And the instructor just kicked the air out of me. And of course I didn't know. And I was like, gasping for air. You know how that goes.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I think I want to tap out. That was my introduction to martial arts right there.
Class one?
Class one. My sister, she did the competition. I remember her bringing home this large trophy for some kata work. It wasn't until I was 36 or 37. So my son started with the Blind Dragon.
Yep.
Who Grandmaster Valdez.
Yes.
We started over there because friends of ours were on the mats over there. So we wanted to get my son Talon into martial arts. He was 5. So then I was diagnosed with kidney cancer when I was 36. Just the next probably 8 to 9 months after the surgery, and I was just depressed, was just eating, trying to get out of my own head, put on a lot of weight. And I said, I want to do something with my kid. So I started the mats over there at Excel Academy with Talon, learning from the Blind Dragon. And that was about almost 8 years ago. So I had no idea, other than wanting to do something with my kid, that I was, of course, when I do something, my goal was black belt eventually. But seeing some of the kata work that I had to go through, it was some of the tornado kicks and some of the spinning heel kicks. I was like, I don't know if my hips can do it, because I injured my hips in the military. And we were doing a kata just recently for our black belt test, and Master Valdez said, what was 20-year-old Miguel Valdez thinking when I created this kata?
Mhm.
Apparently I wasn't thinking
Right.
20 years down the road
Right.
to do this spinning heel kick, the tornado kick. Thankfully, he has shown me enough grace to where he said, Jimmy, you can modify it
Right.
if you so desire. Anyways, the year after I started, my daughter Journey, she started martial arts as well. She joined over there. So the branches now that I continue to go with martial arts is phenomenal. I had no idea, or I didn't plan on taking this path where I'm going now. So I started, of course, jiu-jitsu over at Carlos Machado Jiu-Jitsu because you were doing it. And you said, come on over. I said, absolutely. And I started there, and I will say that I have a friend that you and I both know, Mikey Rodriguez, said, Jimmy, I believe that that jiu-jitsu will be better on your hips. To this day, I said, you lied, you oversold the pain that was going on my hips. So I think, especially parents out there, I always preach, you should get on the mats with your kids.
Yep.
Absolutely. I think you should get out there, make the memories. It's obviously good exercise. Just do something with your kids. And I love the fact that I can do this with my kids, which is why I love your story. Because your story goes from your dad, you, your family, your son, it's amazing to me. And I love the story of families doing together. Of course, it's not an easy road.
No.
My lovely bride,
Sure.
she will not go on the mats. I love her. And as I say, moms out there, you have something that trumps his black belt, my black belt, is Mom Kwando. No one's messing with Mama.
Nope.
And so, even though she won't get on the mats, she is very supportive of that. And I believe that is very key, to have a supportive spouse, a supportive family members get on the mats. So, I absolutely love it. So, hence Legends and Dragons, because my teacher is the Blind Dragon. So, it's a nod to him, because I wouldn't be where I'm at if it wasn't for Miguel Valdez. And by the way, he is blind.
Yep. You
wouldn't know that. And you wouldn't know that with the pinpoint accuracy of his sidekick to the ribs.
Right.
I asked him. So I was a gold belt, just starting off. The dude broke me in like my first sparring, maybe first or second sparring. He hit me with a sidekick so hard that I could not lift my hand above my head for like six weeks.
It's like Doctor Strange, where he knocked your soul out. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was just watching my body, and so I asked him, like, what? Like later on, like years later, knowing him, I'm like, hey, you remember when you broke me with your sidekick? Why? He goes, well, I knew that you were in the military, and I just wanted to see if you were going to quit. I was like, and he goes, you didn't.
Yeah.
I was like, no, I'm not going to quit. I got better at blocking his sidekick, by the way. But I think that every kid should learn a martial art, whether it's karate, whether it's taekwondo, whether it's jiu-jitsu, whether it's anything. And I believe that because I've seen the confidence. I've seen how the shyest kid, I don't want to say weakest, because they're not weak, just not as strong yet, because they haven't hit that point to where their muscles are growing. But I've seen those kids get on the mats, and their confidence is phenomenal. So what you do and what all the other teachers do, it's absolutely phenomenal. And I don't know when. I'm hoping that we share this on today, let's say Friday, March 15th, because I'm going to throw out, I've noticed that you have a bullying seminar tomorrow.
Yes, tomorrow at noon.
Tomorrow at noon. If you see this, hopefully today, stop by here, Legends Martial Arts, for a bullying seminar for your children. And you come in too to watch it, because I promise you, if this guy's teaching it, or if anybody that he knows is teaching it, you will absolutely thank him later. Believe me. Promise you.
So let me tell you something. My 3-point introduction to Miguel Valdez.
Okay.
Okay. Um, I would love to say that I fell in love with him immediately, but that's not true. Because I met him years before I opened the school.
Okay.
Okay? We were at some rinky-dink, and the expression my father, yeah, he loved using the word rinky-dink. Some rinky-dink tournament somewhere, and Miguel Valdez was there, and this was 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay? And it was this long ago. He had a mullet with an Anakin Skywalker Padawan ponytail coming out of the back. That's how long ago it was.
Man. I think I've seen pictures of him like that, by the way.
So he was there, and he was doing a promo for his tricking DVD.
Okay.
Because he taught all these specialty things, and he had some brilliant ideas, right? And I met him there at that tournament, right? And I thought that he was the most disrespectful person that I had ever met in my life, because he didn't tell anybody he was blind. All I knew is this guy won't look me in the eye. He won't look me in the eye.
Yeah.
I was talking to him, and he was looking off to the side, and he wouldn't make eye contact with me. I'm like, dude, he's a black belt? Like, where?
Yeah.
Years later, I learned that he was looking me in the eye. That's the part of his eye he can see out of.
Right.
Information that would have been valuable before I met him. So the second time I met him, because I didn't know where he was or where his school was or anything, so we opened this place, my dad and I, in 2007. And we're in here doing construction work. We had the karate sign up. And this guy with this little, and he was a little guy, walks in the door, and he looks at me, and he sticks his hand out. And he said, "I'm Miguel Valdez, and I wanted to meet the guy opening a karate school up the street from me. Are we going to be friends?" And I thought, the guts on this guy, I fell in love with him immediately.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful thing. We became super close, and he's one of my best friends. So that was the second point introduction. But that day, I found out that he was blind as a bat.
Yeah.
Right? And his eyesight was getting worse and worse and worse the older he got, right? Like when I met him, he could still judge kata and still judge sparring and stuff like that. But we sparred. Now, he's told me he's blind.
Right.
Now, I come from a fighting background.
Right.
So we spar around, and I'm going super easy on him because I'm not going to hit a blind guy.
Right.
Like, I'm not a monster. I'm not going to go beat up fourth graders, you know?
Right.
He kicked me so hard in the face.
Oh, yes.
I'm almost knocked me out.
Yeah.
These with his little legs, you know?
Yeah.
No mullet anymore.
Okay.
But still had the round kick. I don't know, and I was like, all right, bang! and then we're just like, we're super good friends ever since then.
He likes to tell me that we're cousin schools.
Sure, yeah, we are.
Because I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that he earned his 6th degree from your dad.
Yes, he did.
So that's why he says cousin schools, and it's amazing. He is an amazing fighter.
He really is.
And you do not know, and I tell him this, so if he listens to this later, he will absolutely.
Well, he's not going to watch it.
Absolutely, absolutely not. But you don't know how blind he is until you take him to lunch. like you don't know. Like we went to a restaurant, and he was like, I have to use the restroom. I'm like, all right, Master Valdez, it's down the hall to the left, and I'm over here yelling and shouting, okay, make a left, okay, and then he goes in the restroom. Then I'm not even paying attention. I'm like probably on my phone doing something, eating, and the next thing I know, he's walking out and he sits at another table with people, and he's like, hey, he goes, Jimmy. I'm like, no, I'm over here, man. He goes, oh, excuse me, and then so he just walks over. He's bumped, because he has his walking stick. Bumps into something.
Was that the day that Mikey Rodriguez told him to go into the girls' bathroom?
No, so that story, and I want to say that story because I want to have Mikey on here as well.
We will. We'll save it.
I'll save that story for later. But anyways, I love the fact that he is blind, and what's even cool about him and his school is that he has opened the doors to special needs kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so
Some of them have gotten their black belts, not doing any less than somebody else. Like, he's not going to promote somebody to
No.
black belt.
No, absolutely
Just
not.
because they put the time in.
No, absolutely not. So, and that is something. So for me, learning the whole process. I've only been in this world for about 8 years, so I have learned not all karate schools are created equal.
No.
There are schools that basically you pay to play.
Yep.
That they'll guarantee you'll get this belt in this time. You'll get this belt in this time. You'll be a black belt in 3 years.
Right.
And it's a pay to play process. And I had because I come from a background from Master Valdez is you can be at the last belt before black belt for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You have to earn it.
So I have a kind of a unique mindset because I was a fly on the wall my entire life in martial. Like, I grew up watching my dad run karate schools. So I have seen all over the map different ways of doing things. So I have definitely seen the pay to play. Like, your testing requirements are how current are you on your tuition, and it has no bearing at all on skill. And then I've seen on the other end of the spectrum, I have seen if you're not an exceptional fighter, like really good, you'll never make black.
Right.
You'll never make black. And one of the things that I noticed that my dad did is he based getting a black belt on before and after. So what might be a black belt to a 50-year-old soccer mom who's got a lot of injuries, if she has progressed from white to black the same that a exceptionally talented athlete progressed from white to black, even though the end result isn't the same.
Right.
Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
And so I think there is a middle ground. I think that there's a lot to be said for doing the work.
Absolutely.
Doing the work, because otherwise, here's a good example. If Alyssa Pruitt is a black belt, you've seen her kata.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do any of us get a black belt then?
Absolutely not.
If you have to fight next to Elijah Crumpler.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, if we're putting our best black belts out there as the standard,
right,
then one or two people over the course of our life will be able to benefit from making a black belt. And I do believe that there has to be a standard, but if you think about it the way schools work, I don't know if they do letter grades anymore, do they?
Yes, they do letter grades. Yeah.
So
we're not that old. I hope they still do letter grades.
A C minus is still a passing black belt.
Right.
If you came from an F minus, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you've dropped the weight and you've gotten better and you have put in the time and you have been willing to fight,
absolutely,
even if you're not a knockout kickboxer, I believe that's it's valid.
I agree. I just don't. What I don't like to see is, and I haven't seen this. So, but what I hope is not happening out there is someone saying, "We guarantee you this. We guarantee you, like you."
It is happening.
Oh, I'm sure it is. But
so,
I'm not. So I'm also not a small. I say small business owner. I also don't run my own karate school. Right. I'm a student at a karate school. I pay.
So Rogan had the guy, I always forget his name. I can never say his name right. And the funny thing is that I hang on a lot of what he says. So I should really learn how to say his name right. I think it's Fariz. Anyways, GSP's coach. Okay,
yeah.
And what he has talked about is this taekwondo, karate school, big business of... if you just if you're just around long enough, you'll get a belt. That has actually even crept its way into jiu-jitsu, which I would say that jiu-jitsu is the last bastion of, if you're not good enough, you don't get it.
Yeah.
They don't, I want a black belt. Well, buckle up, because
Right.
you're going to be here a while.
Yeah.
No matter how good you are, you're still going to be here a while.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But that has, even because martial arts is a business, it's even started to work its way in. And Rogan was surprised. He's like, I've never heard of that in jiu-jitsu.
Right.
So I think that you need to do your due diligence
Right.
on where you train, because it's real easy, Jimmy, to think martial arts, soccer, football,
Right.
gymnastics. Here's the thing. Those are all the same thing in this regard. They are a thing you can do,
Right.
right? But soccer is soccer, no matter where you go. It's in other words, they don't have different kicks in the goals that are different points in different places.
Right.
Like, it's the same thing. But
Right.
martial arts is like saying, this is the example I would give. Saying I do martial arts is like saying I do art, or I do music,
Just
or I do
like-
dance.
Yeah.
Well, what kind of dance?
Right. Yeah.
Jazz, tap, and ballet is not salsa and merengue.
Right.
They're vastly different, but they're both called dance.
Right.
So saying you do martial arts doesn't really narrow it down as
Yeah.
much as people think. And what I have found is that people, when they call a karate school or a taekwondo school or whatever, they don't know what to ask.
Sure.
So they
Yeah.
ask these questions. They ask, what style? How much is it? When really the most relevant thing is, what kind of a connection and chemistry is my child or myself going to have with the instructors there?
That's a
That
good
is
point.
the most important thing.
Yeah.
They could learn kung fu, they could learn jiu-jitsu, they could learn taekwondo, but they're not going to do any of it if they don't get traction, if they don't
Right.
connect
Right.
with the
That's
people
good.
there.
Yeah.
So you can be in the best style of the world, but if Icy Mike, he does the Hard to Hurt podcast.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
He said, people ask me all the time, what martial arts school should I go to? He says, one you'll go to. Because even
Yeah.
if it's a bad school,
Sure.
over enough time, you'll go, wow, I don't like it here anymore. I'm going to go find another place.
Right.
But you wouldn't know that if you didn't go and train. So
That
even,
makes sense.
and you'll hear this all the time, that guy's going to get people hurt. I love this. He did a podcast on this. That guy's going to get someone killed. All right, hold on a second. So, not learning any martial arts is going to keep you safe.
Right.
But learning substandard martial arts is worse.
Right.
I mean,
no.
you're at least doing this.
Sure, yeah, doing
it
some
might
sort
be
of
bad, but it's better than just that.
Look, I was told this, and this is something that I live by. My ugly martial arts is still martial arts.
Absolutely.
My ugly taekwondo, my ugly jujitsu
Right.
is still jujitsu.
My mentor, who is now my teacher, now that we lost my father, Hanshi Kovar, says something that his father said, which is a little bit of something is better than a whole lot of nothing.
Oh, absolutely. I'll tell you what, I have a lot of praise, obviously, for your school, for you and your school, for Master Valdez and Excel Academy, and Professor Greg and Professor Phillips,
Dude.
or that Carlos Machado.
Yeah.
Those guys. And listen, if you're listening to this and watching this, you have to do your due diligence as a parent, and you have to do your homework, because not all schools are created equal. Not all teachers are created equal. And that is why you as a parent need to obviously ask the questions. I know, listen, as a parent, I know you're going to say, hey, how much does it cost? I get it. That's the reality of life. How much is it? How much am I going to spend a month? But the important thing is, look at the quality of teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that you have set up your teaching here is phenomenal.
Thank you.
The way that Professor Greg and Professor Phillip teach, phenomenal. Listen, if they if they have the patience to teach me, they have the patience.
Right.
You can absolutely do it.
Right.
And then the way that Master Valdez does it, Master Valdez is always on the mats. His school number size and just size wise is smaller than Legend or Carlos Machado's mid cities, but the way that he trains and the way that he brings up the kids to be instructors, I like that, because you're getting them not only to have skin in the game, but to take ownership of bringing up the next generation of martial artists.
Do you know what Excel, Legends, and Machado's all have in common?
What's that?
None of these three schools have teachers there that were not raised in a school.
Yeah, that's, you know what, that's
so
right. Yeah.
So, in other words, none of us have went out and said, "Oh, that guy that I have no experience with, or that girl that I have no experience with, is a black belt
Right.
somewhere else. I don't know who they are. I don't know anything about them, but I'm going to hire them to come in and teach all of our 1, 2, 3, 4, 500 students."
Right.
Yeah. So, raising instructors from inside the school, and I have a lot of business mentors that say, like, listen, there's a couple of different ways you can go about this as long as the training is proper. I don't know anything about hiring an instructor that I don't know.
Right.
So all of my instructors are like Excels, and it's like Machado's. My instructors were children that grew into adults that are still here.
Yeah. And that says a lot for the longevity
Right.
of it. That's amazing.
Right. It's like a Google review. You can't really fake that.
Right.
You know, people aren't spending a decade plus
Right.
in your school if you're doing everything wrong.
Right.
They're gonna leave.
Sure.
And I see the way that Professor Greg and Professor Phillips, Professor Phillips also my instructor, who I met when he was 12 years old.
Which is, he tells me, which is phenomenal. Awesome.
But they came up in that school.
Yeah.
And so if you're not going to personally teach the students that walk up and enroll in your school, I believe that the person that you put there in your stead, because you're putting them there in your place.
Right.
You're saying, you be me because I'm the head of this school. How do you do that with somebody you don't know?
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And name brand. You don't want to have your name attached to an instructor who is not going to bring up the next generation in a way that you would have.
Well, and I think they need to, because obviously if you're hiring somebody, they have to respect your authority.
Right.
Right? Well, how can they if you're not their teacher?
Right. Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying it's the only way, but it's the only way for me.
Right. It works for
Yeah.
how we have it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know that future talks we'll talk about running the school, because I have zero experience. I just have experience getting my butt whipped on the mat as a student. But I know that we've been going for just a bit, and I know this is our pilot, our inaugural whatever podcast. But let me ask this to kind of wrap it up. I heard this on a podcast, or this question, or maybe somewhere online, I don't remember, about the hardest belt to get in martial arts. What would you say?
Oh, well, I would say that it's very much like I've heard Professor Greg say, and it's the white belt.
Absolutely. That's what I think too. That question actually got me thinking, because of course my brain wants to go immediately black belt.
Sure.
Like, oh, the hardest. But then when I started to really think about that question, the hardest belt to get is taking off your pants belt, changing it for a white belt.
Right.
Because you have to overcome the
mental gymnastics, right? Sure.
You're like, I want to do it, but people are on the sideline. They're looking at me, and I'm embarrassed, and I don't want to do it. And I'm talking as an adult, by the way, because my kids, as soon as they decided to jump on the mats,
boom,
they had no choice. I was not allowing them to quit.
Good.
Do not let your kids quit, by the way.
Yeah.
But the hardest one, I believe, for me, just watching the sideline, and I don't want to say me because it was easy for me to jump on the mats, but I talked to a lot of adult students and I encourage them, hey, those people out there on the sideline, they're on the sideline, but you're out here.
Mm-hmm.
You are learning
Mm-hmm.
and you have become a white belt, and that is the hardest belt to get. And once you start breaking that down, like listen, you the mental gymnastics, as you said, the embarrassment thing, getting out there. And I'll tell you what, this is what I tell the parents too, or when they get on the mats. I'm like, look at those people, they're on their phones. They're not paying attention to their kids or or what you're doing. And I hate to say that, but the reality is
But we want our kids to stay off their tablets.
you know what? We'll save that for another episode
Right.
as well. But listen, I hope you guys who are watching this, you give us some feedback. Your negative feedback, you can give it to us. We're just not going to listen.
Yeah, no, we're not going to listen.
The positive feedback, absolutely give us some positive feedback, because what we want to do on this journey and on this trip, if you will, is we're just going to talk martial arts. We're going to talk life. We're going to talk raising kids.
Yep.
We're going to talk business from the legend himself. We're going to talk a lot of stuff. We're going to talk about music. We'll talk about just
live organ transplants.
Yeah, if we do that, absolutely.
Right.
What else are we going to talk about? Just anything and everything. We hope you guys stick around. That's my last 2 cents for at least this episode.
Actually, I really like his last 2 cents, so I'm gonna let the record stand. Thanks for joining us, guys. Take care.